But now it's time to start talking business. And I'd like to introduce Laly David, partner at OurCrowd, to talk about why the corporates are so interested in Israel. Laly, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Just need a clicker. OK. Glad to be here. I lead business development at OurCrowd. And I'm not going to talk about OurCrowd because we have John Medved here to talk about OurCrowd more, the best speaker about OurCrowd globally. So I'm going to skip OurCrowd and just say that I have the pleasure of running business development at OurCrowd, which means that I deal with startups on one hand and multinationals on the other hand. And it's a privilege to be in that juncture between the two parties and try to make the most out of it. So I'm going to start very quickly to say there's a big problem with traditional multinationals. There's no need to say too many words about this. There's a pain. There's an issue. You need to innovate to survive. It's very common knowledge. I can quote from yesterday. I was sitting with the head of ventures at Procter & Gamble. And he said that in their balance sheet, they have enough funds to survive for 10 years. But that's it. If they're not going to revolutionize Procter & Gamble, that's it. This is what they have. They have 10 years. So this leads the way in terms of seeking innovation globally and specifically in Israel. You can look at statistics. You can look at lifespans of companies. You can look at the cost to form a new startup that disrupt the way that things are being done at traditional companies. Either way, whichever statistics you lean on, there is an imminent need for innovation. If you look in the past few years, not actually few years, in the past 40 years, the different ways of multinationals doing business globally, and again, it's even more so in Israel. It started with opening R&D centers in Israel. Just to name few, the more traditional, established R&D centers in Israel is Intel, is GE, is IBM. More recently, in the last 5 years, there's Apple, there's Facebook, more and more R&D centers in Israel. Karin is probably going to take the lead on that. Traditionally, it used to be that a multinational acquires a smaller company in Israel, and that becomes the anchor for an R&D center. Today, it's not even necessary. Multinationals establish R&D centers in Israel regardless of an acquisition. More recent came the birth of corporate VCs. In the last 20 years, it became very dominant, again, globally and in Israel, really changing, affecting the landscape of funding for startups in Israel. I think mostly in the last 5 years, multinationals have started to open accelerators in Israel, different programs in Israel, typically a fully owned accelerator. The Barclays accelerator, the Citibank accelerator, the IBM accelerator, the Microsoft accelerator. What I want to point out is actually the trend of the last 2 years, which we're going to get into, which is more collaborative approach. So the CVCs, you see the growth. And there are different pros and cons for corporate VCs. There's the good and there's the not so good. The good is that the corporate VCs enable the multinationals to transact with startups, to get direct exposure to innovation, to be part of the strategic growth of the company. The not so good is that it's not the core experience and expertise of the corporates. We hear different stories. I can quote one of the work we do with Honda. Honda used to have a corporate VC, but it was completely not aligned with the culture of the corporate. So the VC would make investments in the Silicon Valley. It would go back to Japan. And in Japan, they would say, we just invested 10 months ago. Why is the valuation higher? We just finished signing the documents 3 months ago. Why is there another round? So it really wasn't in the culture of the corporate to actually seek innovation using a VC. Different pushbacks from entrepreneurs. They don't want to be colored with the color of a specific multinational. We see that day to day. The accelerators, the good is that, again, it gives direct exposure. It's very much dedicated, proactive, seeking innovation, being very aligned with the wish list of the company. The misalignment is between the innovation team and the business units. The innovation team can build a pipeline of innovative companies in the accelerator. And again, we see that with all the different corporate accelerators. And then they graduate the accelerator, and there's no continuity within the multinational. And then financial VC is another obvious, it's not even a trend, another obvious practice is for corporates to invest in a VC. Become an LP in a VC. It supposedly gives you exposure to innovation, a broad funnel of companies. The fact is that there is a structural misalignment of interest between financial-driven investment to strategic-driven investment. It's a high cost to invest in a VC. The misalignment even starts with the lifespan of the VC, 8 years, 7 years, versus a multinational that can think forward 15, 20 years. So, recent years shown moving to completely different, something completely different. So what we see the last 2 years is much more collaborative models, much more a different approach, taking the advantages from the different approaches and building it into a new way of doing business, seeking boots on the ground in Israel in different ways. And I want to use one case study, which is GE. So GE has an R&D center in Israel, as I mentioned, a very well-established R&D center with more than 500 employees, different centers in Israel. Recently, they opened a commercialization program in Israel. They have their own Predix platform to do business digitally with GE. Predix has, I think now, probably over 20 people in Israel seeking innovation and connecting the innovation in Israel to the Predix platform. And they have a CVC in Israel, GE Ventures, and they're doing many investments in Israel. We, OurCrowd, we have 6 investments with GE, and we have a strategic co-investment agreement with GE. So we basically expand their scope in Israel. This is a short video. A company seeking to do business with GE. In this case, it might be long. All right, we're going to drop it. So basically, the movie shows what's cool about the movie. The movie shows graphically the different business units in GE that we helped our portfolio companies do business with. And what's cool about the movie is that if you stop it and actually look at the names and the business unit, it's all real. Like we have in the energy, we have in consumer electronics, we have different business units in GE that we manage using the GE presence in Israel to connect them with relevant companies from Israel. And another short case study is Honda. As I mentioned, Honda shifted all of its resources from its VC to what it's called Open Innovation Platform, which is even more exciting because Honda, in its DNA, is very much a non-invented here company. And the fact that they managed to create a truly open innovation platform and welcome companies to come and work with Honda is revolutionary. So we work with Honda for the last 2 years. We've seen more than 150 different companies with Honda. They visited Israel approximately 4 or 5 times a year. And now they're leading between 3 to 5 different stages of POCs with Israeli companies. And the last example of a more innovative approach is the Junction. The Junction is an accelerator in Israel. It's one of the most traditional accelerators. It was founded in 2011. What's unique about them is that they have corporate partners in the accelerator. So instead of owning your own accelerator, partners can join and get exposure to the deal flow and the different innovative solutions. Thank you very much. And we are partners with the Junction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laly, for a really insightful beginning to Innovate Israel.